The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Thomas and Herho. Hi, Thomas.
Hey, Dom. How's it going?
Very well, thanks. And Jack Barazzini. Hi, Jack.
How's it going, Dom?
Very well, thank you. So let's get into our topics today. We have a good slate of topics to discuss. And it covers some interesting ground that we're covering today. Our first topic is on the idea of social credit scores. The idea that your online activity is now your credit score from a social point of view, from operating society. So we have financial credit scores where you want to get a loan or a credit card or something like that, and a dossier is compiled on you by credit agencies that, are you a good credit risk or a bad credit risk? That's the basic idea. Well, social credit scores are where they compile information on you from your activity online, say, or activity related to your online activity. Say if you use certain web services, that sort of things in the real world, and they then decide whether to do business with you or whether to allow you to be on their platform or that sort of thing based on that. For example, if you've ever seen that, I didn't look at the title of it. There was that Netflix series called Black Mirror, which is sort of a Twilight Zone for the 21st century. There's a whole episode where everyone has a score, a constantly running score of their social standing. And that score determines whether people will do business with you, whether you have your job, whether you can get a certain apartment. And it's very dystopian. But now this seems almost as like they're starting to come true. So there was an article in Engadget called Your Online Activity is Now Effectively a Social Credit Score. And they talk about some cases where people have had this one woman had her her Instagram account canceled because of things she was doing on Twitter that would have violated Instagram's terms of service. She wasn't doing it on Instagram. She was doing it on Twitter, but she got noticed for it, and they canceled her Instagram account just in case. Sort of like Minority Report. There was some pre-crime going on here.
Yeah.
And then there's other cases where Airbnb has canceled people's accounts because they were engaged in certain professions. In sex work, for example. So people who are online, they either make movies or are involved in the adult entertainment business, have had their Airbnb accounts canceled, even though they didn't violate the terms of service for using the places. They weren't doing the work in those places. They were just renting them to stay overnight. So here's my question. I got to put to both of you after this long-winded introduction. What do you think of this? Is this a good thing? It's a bad thing? This is not being done by government. It's being done by private business. Do you think private businesses should be allowed to do this or not? So what do you think of this whole thing? Thomas, can I start with you?
Sure. I think anybody who's listened to me on the show before knows that I am a strong supporter of liberty, and that I'm a strong supporter also of privacy. And this is one of those interesting spots where the two of them butt heads. So, I was looking through this and reading through the Airbnb stuff, and I can't argue with the case that they're trying to make about needing to know some of these things, because if you're running an Airbnb and a certain type of people start showing up en masse at your location, whether they are doing anything or not, it can affect the value of the property. And so as a property owner who might rent my property out on Airbnb, I might be concerned about the type of person that is renting my property even if they're not doing any of their business there, it would be like a celeb showing up at your place and everybody in the neighborhood getting mad because they didn't know that this was going to happen. And that might be the case with Airbnb too. So it's tough because on the one hand, I do think that there's a privacy issue here, but I'm not really sure if it's any more of a privacy issue than what we as users of social media are already doing by vetting the people that we're friends with on social media.
Right. Of course, one thing, like if you or I don't like someone we are friends with on social media, we just unfriend them or even block them if we don't want to have anything to do with them. But we can't remove their account. And where social media like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, this is the public square now in many ways. And if someone is removed from that public square, that's a big deal. It effectively silences them in many ways. And this is being done by private businesses based on whatever criteria they hold. They reserve the right. It's all in the terms of service. They reserve the right to cancel you for whatever reason they like, and you have no recourse, and you're effectively silenced in the public square. Jack, what do you think of all this?
I understand where Airbnb is coming from on this, but I think it sets a bad precedent. Like, I would not want people who are doing certain things staying in a home I was renting out, but at the same time, if they're not doing that stuff in the house and it's a home to rent, there's not a real issue there. Like, you cannot control what people are doing outside the rental.
Right.
So I understand where they're coming from, but I think it's a really slippery slope, because then you can say, okay, I don't like this person because of things they've written online, not even something they've done. And you can just you can just block anybody just because you don't like them.
And in fact, that's right in the terms of service. They can block you. There are certain things they can't block you for because the law prevents them. Race, creed, color, your sex, that sort of stuff. But everything else is fair game under the law at the moment. And so one of the things that they're apparently doing, like Airbnb in particular, is they have an AI, or they're creating it. They have a patent for an AI. They haven't. I don't think it exists completely yet. But they have a patent for an AI that will crawl the internet, scraping everything it can find on you, and building a profile on you, sort of like Facebook's shadow profiles, and it build a profile on you and score you on traits like conscientiousness and openness.
What does it even mean?
Yeah,
Right.
Exactly. How do they define these things? Am I more or less open if I'm, say, a conservative Catholic or an Orthodox Catholic who accepts everything the church teaches? Does that make me more or less conscientious and open? These are things that should concern everyone, because really, especially in the times we live in right now, where we are more divided and divisive than ever, when people start to put categorize you based on what they can find, not by what you've actually done to them, by what they perceived you to have done, compiled entirely by automation, frankly.
Right.
This isn't a private eye going out and shoe leather finding out stuff about you. It's all automated.
Even without that, I think really what it comes down to is there are already systems in place, especially even on Airbnb, that take care of this, but they take care of it after the fact. And so they rely on real events. So if you go to a place and you actually end up doing something at the person's house that you shouldn't, or you devalue their property value because of whatever you were doing, they can rate you. So the person renting the house can also rate the renter, from what I'm given to understand. I don't know Airbnb in and out, but I'm pretty sure that's what you can do. So, that if you can evaluate the person and then that person's score goes down on the site, then obviously that's going to make them make it harder for them to rent on the site as well. And so they'll naturally select out of that situation. So it's already in place, and it seems like an extra step of effort that really isn't necessary,
Right.
I think it's an attempt to assure people who would put their property on Airbnb, but they're still worried about the risk. And I kind of feel like if you're going to be putting your house on Airbnb, you're taking a risk, and you just have to accept that. Absolutely.
Now, beyond Airbnb, I mean, this goes beyond Airbnb to like, for example, Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. So if Facebook or Twitter, one of Twitter's big problems is the trolling problem, the problem of people behaving badly toward each other, and sometimes ganging up on people or just hiding behind an anonymity to really be cruel to someone. And Twitter may decide, like, the only way for us to get out of this is to prevent these people from being on our system at all. So we're going to build profiles of people and score them in advance so that they don't even have the chance to be this kind of person to other people. Again, that's a question, because this is doing this under these criteria here. But what about, say, in China, where you have the Muslim Uyghurs and others who are being scored by the Chinese government? Well, what's to prevent China from saying to companies who want to do business there, say American companies or European companies, well, you have to give us your information, these profiles. You have to use these AI, or you have to use these standards. This is concerning to me, and it probably should be for all of us.
Nope, I very much agree with that. I think that I think this is an issue where you have that privacy is necessary in the sense of disconnecting what we're doing from what we might do in the future. And that's the really big thing that this comes down to, is that we keep relying on algorithms to predict future behavior. And that's, if there's anything that humans are good at showing is wrong, it's predicting future behavior based solely on past behavior.
Right. Yeah. And in the past, we may not have had computers to do this, but in the past, we have had situations where we have tried to say, this group of people who have this same profile, whether it's religion or race or what have you, are all this kind of person, and therefore we should treat them all this way, whether it's Nazi concentration camps, internment camps in the U.S. for Japanese Americans, on the West Coast, or to African American people, or what have you, anywhere in the world. I mean, this is something that has historically been done. We categorize a group of people based on particular traits that we attribute to them, and that has historically led to very bad things. And that should concern all of us. What do you think is our recourse for this? What can we do to save ourselves from this? Is legislation the only option for us?
I think at a certain point, like, anti-discrimination laws just need to apply more to these companies that are kind of circumventing traditional hotel chains or rental car chains, like all these small companies that are they're like distributing the ownership of that, but not really. They're kind of just low overhead hotel chains at this point. Like, people may think that you're benefiting from it, and you are to a certain extent, but you're not really in control of your own Airbnb. It's still a company that's controlling it.
But they still have, I mean, those anti-discrimination laws that exist now do apply to Airbnb and to the people who rent their homes.
Right.
It's just those laws don't cover this sort of thing. That's the trick.
They need to be updated to cover.
Yeah.
You cannot accuse people of crimes they haven't committed.
You can't profile people. I mean, really, that's what it comes down to. Yeah. It's like you shouldn't be profiling people. But this should also be something that really is a huge strike against the company. And for anybody using the company, it should be something that automatically sets off red flags for every single person involved, whether you're on the side that's renting your Airbnb or on the side that you're going to it. Any company that's willing to do this, it should immediately be a red flag that says, I don't know if I really want to be involved with these people.
Right.
And then, interestingly, my question on the other side of this is, as a person who has no credit cards and has never had any credit cards, I don't really have many social media accounts anymore. I use my Twitter, and it's like when I like a video on Facebook, it says that I like the video on Twitter, and then I share the SQPN stuff, and that's mostly the limit of my Twitter activity right now.
Everything.
So it's, I'm not engaged. What does that mean for me in this social scoring system? Am I like a weirdo outsider that they don't want to deal with because they don't have this profile for me?
Or the profile they have for you is incredibly flawed and could be detrimental to you.
Exactly.
That's the trick. I mean, the thing is the shadow profiles. In case people don't know what it is Facebook years ago developed this idea of a shadow profile. There are billions of people who have profiles on Facebook, but there's all those people who don't. And but they have data on you because when I join Facebook, if I'm not a sophisticated user, I upload my contact book. Don't ever allow Facebook Messenger or Facebook to upload your address book, by the way, when it asks and it bugs you about it constantly to do it. Don't do that for the sake of everyone that's in your address book, because that just gives Facebook ways to gather data on them. But people do that. And then there's all kinds of other information out there, such that all this web of data that connects to you, a person who doesn't have a Facebook profile, they have all of this data that connects to this shadow, this person who's not on the thing, but they can say quite a lot about you, even though you're not on the service. And that's the problem of big data. There's all this data out there about you, more than you even know that is out there about you, that is in public databases, that the government, your driver's license, every time you pay taxes, all this other data, your phone numbers, and all the stuff that's out there that's semi-public, not even public, but semi-public, that's for sale, private data that's for sale, that can create a profile of you, and they'll scrape all that, they'll buy those databases, and that's tricky. That's kind of scary. So this is, on the other hand, I have to take the other side of this and say there are times when a profile is good, right? Like, we want to profile terrorists. We like when the FBI can say people who do all of these 7 things have serial killer tendencies, and we're going to take a look at this guy because he has all of these things, and we're not going to arrest him, but we're going to he'll be the one we look at.
Well, I would like to see a solution that's more focused on the solution than the problem here too, because
right.
What you have, and this is my wife immediately jumps to this, is she's the social justice warrior in our house, and so she's jumping to this thought that Airbnb in and of itself is an example of how the housing market has completely failed this whole string of people right now, because my uncle, for example, rents out the front half of his house just so that he can live in the house.
Right.
So he's got an Airbnb for the front half of his house just so that he can afford to live in the area that he's in. And that's kind of where we're moving, is like, you have to do all of these odd jobs to make ends meet. And so we're reliant on these companies. And then once you get reliant on this company, they can do all sorts of crazy things, and you don't really have any recourse to say anything about it.
Right. Yeah. If you are making a living as an Uber driver, if Uber decides to cut you off, you're out of work. You're done. Right. Just, and then they can be, you don't have rights as an employee. You're just technically a contractor.
Right.
One of the things,
it's the illusion of ownership.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to mention, talk about these shadow profiles, is this company that's been come up recently, called Clearview AI. It's kind of got on the news, and they're a startup that is providing a database to law enforcement of photos for facial recognition. And what they do is they scrape the internet of every possible photo, every public photo on Facebook, YouTube, Venmo, Twitter, everywhere, Flickr, every photo possible, and they've built more than 3 billion images to create a facial recognition database, so that when the police have a grainy photo that they've enhanced using magical enhance technology like you see on TV, but they have a photo from a security camera, and they want to find out who this is, Clearview will compare that against every photo of you of people on the internet that they could possibly find. And that's kind of scary when you think about it, because it means that my photos are being used against my will. I mean, I didn't give permission for this company to sell my photos to law enforcement. So what do you think? I mean, this is the kind of the thing is scary. That they, all kinds of scary scenarios can be brought up regarding this. So I
got a very big problem with this.
Yeah, I could guess that both of you guys would have problems with it too.
Yeah. Well, and it's really a big issue for somebody like me who has a face that apparently looks like everyone. So like the facial recognition programs cannot pick me out of a crowd a lot of times. And they'll say, is this guy you? Is this guy you? Is this? And I'll get like this endless stream of people where I'm like, nope, that's not me. Nope, that's not me either. No.
Right. Yeah, well, one of the things they this Run report, I'll link it in the show notes, is this reporter talks about how this company is very secretive and very shadowy. There's no transparency into who they are, where their technology comes from, what their intention is for the future. And then this company's, database is going to be handed out to, bought by law enforcement. And how good is the database? How reliable is it? What happens when it makes a mistake? These sorts of things.
How secure is it?
Exactly. How secure?
Is it going to be like every other AI out there right now and assume that all people of darker skin tone are just about the same because it can't tell the details?
Right.
That's a big problem.
This is a thing that people think AI is HAL 9000 from or any other smart computer. Yeah, it's not Data from Star Trek. It's still pretty dumb.
It's lore.
Yeah. Artificial semi-intelligent.
OCR is really if anyone has not worked with image recognition, it is very, very complicated to do image recognition, right? And you don't think about what a computer sees, but all a computer sees is a bunch of pixels on a screen. And so when you get those pixels together in a bunch, that's basically all the computer is doing, is thinking of a group of pixels together in a bunch. It's trying to analyze what those pixels do and how they relate to other pixels on the page. And that's pretty much all it's doing. So it can't look at someone and see features. It just sees the way the pixels are oriented.
And they have a hard time with, especially if you're going off a security camera and pictures off of the internet, like they're not going to be posed photos taken for the purpose of facial recognition. So there's going to be a wide margin of error.
All right. So reason to be concerned. I'm not sure there's much we can do as individuals at this point here. We just have to be aware. We have to keep when an opportunity comes up to tell our elected representatives to take action, we'll have to think about that. We'll keep an eye on it from here, so you keep listening and we'll tell you as it develops. But this is something to be concerned about with these services, is that we've got to take responsibility for our own privacy, but also our own our relationship with these companies, not just be passive users. We've got to be more active with this so to prevent dystopian futures. Speaking of dystopian futures, let's move on to our next topic, which is this interesting article that showed up on Medium.com by someone. It's a sort of a think piece. It's not just sort of. It is a think piece called "Robot Priests Are Changing Human Religion," and it's interesting perspective from someone who, from what I could tell, is not themselves a religious person. Or at least not someone who has conventional religious beliefs, put it that way. And that's just, I'm just speculating. Maybe I could be wrong on that. But they're curious about and thinking about how robot priests could change human religion. So here's a quote from the article. This raises the interesting question of what to do when someone makes a machine that is actually intended to play the role of clergy. Some pastors joke that they help people hatch, match, and dispatch by celebrating births, weddings, and funerals. And to me, end quote. But to me, this raises the question of what is the clergy for sacramental faiths like Catholicism and the Orthodox Church. For non-sacramental faiths, the clergy is just a clergyman, a reverend, the minister is just a facilitator. They lead in services. They help you think about things. But a true priest, from a sacramental point of view, is one who makes the divine present to us. And in that situation, humanity can't be replaced. What do you guys think of this article and what this fellow has to say about? He brings up some other issues, but what do you think about this idea that he's trying to look at?
I think it was interesting to see where he was coming from, but the problem is I feel like the premise is so fundamentally flawed that there just wasn't really a lot there. Like the question is, can there be robot priests? No. Like
right.
Period. When you're coming from the point of view of a Catholic, yeah, definitely. It's
right.
Just an absolute not. I think it's really interesting. You're moving into this space where God is a human creation when you look at this, right? Because
Right.
because we're talking about a created thing that's created by us, not created naturally, not naturally existent, not supernaturally existent or anything like that. But the thing that we created, humans created, we put it together physically, we imbued it with its own working thought. And now we're turning to that thing to connect us with our creator. And it's so backwards. It's just such a reverse of what should be happening that it really just, even from a non-Catholic perspective, it's dumbfounding to kind of try and process this.
Right.
It does at times sound like I said, a non-religious person trying to parse out how religious people think and trying to connect us to them. But he makes a point. He says, priests tell us what God says. And I think he's using priest to mean any religious leader, I think, or any clergyman. But he says, priests tell us what God says. Should we ever let us, I think maybe it's a typo. Should we ever let an AI tell us what God says, or what it thinks God says, or what it wants us to think God says? In other words, should we ever be in a position? Should we ever let ourselves be in a position where an AI is being an intermediary with God? But of course, no. I mean, I don't think we should ever let an AI tell us, anything of that sort of import, of life-changing import. But how could an AI tell us what God says? It's not, again, like I think, as you alluded to, it doesn't have a connection to the metaphysical. It doesn't have a connection to the supernatural. It is entirely a natural creation. And maybe this gets to, what do we think an AI could be? Could an AI ever really be alive? And that's really the question.
Ooh, that's right. We get into some deep weeds there.
Yeah.
I think it's one other thing to look at here is this is it's an area where the people who are saying, I'm spiritual, not religious, starts to really come into focus.
Yeah.
And you start to look at these people who they want to go to confession. They want to participate in the sacrament, but they want to do it as an individual act. And the beautiful thing about religion is that it forces us outside of ourselves. We have to be with other people. We have to commune with each other. And that's really the basis of religion is you're not alone. Your brothers and sisters are there with you, for better or for worse. They're there, and you need to be involved with them. And so to have a machine be the intermediary, it changes that situation so that it's no longer a relationship with anything. It's just something there to serve us and to serve me individually, rather than to force me to be involved with a community.
Right. It's inward facing, not outward facing.
Mm-hmm.
And it raises some interesting questions, like, should we let robots or AI do certain areas that we should not let them do, like whether it's clergy or therapist? Should we ever let a robot be a therapist? Should we ever let when I say robot, I mean AI or robot.
Right.
Should we ever let one be a doctor? Because are our bodies machines, or is being a doctor more than just fixing the meat machine? Is it something more than that? There's a quote from the article, and that to give the author of the article credit, which I neglected to get the name, but let me just to give him the name, David O'Hara. To give David O'Hara credit, he asked the question: are there kinds of work like caring for our communities and for our own bodies that we should not automate? Tools amplify our efforts. They also amplify our intentions, and maybe our intention is to distance ourselves from the difficult work of care. Our machines might offer one kind of care while being the physical expression of our lack of interest in those who need the care. And that kind of goes to what you were saying, Thomas, about that draws us out of ourselves, whereas automating things can make us less engaged and maybe give us an easy way to not do those sorts of things.
There's also a bigger issue of automating every single profession means there's going to be a lot of people without work. And what do you do with those people? Like at a certain point, you can't just take someone's job away by automating it with a robot and then assuming they'll be able to pick up the slack.
the books and TV series like The Expanse imagines that and has some interesting things to say about that. Yeah.
I'd like to point to another piece of literature that I think everyone should read on this. It's a short story by E.M. Forster. It is called The Machine Stops. It is the only science fiction piece that I know of that he wrote, and he wrote it around the turn of the 20th century, so early 1900s. And absolutely brilliant piece, and it analyzes a future in which we've become so isolated that everything we do as humans is from inside of a cell, and we use the machine to communicate with each other. And then he imagines what would happen if that suddenly stopped working. And it's a really, really incredible short story, and probably one of the most influential pieces I've read about the way that I think about us interacting with machines.
Interesting. I'll make sure to put a link to that in the show notes. One thing I want to point I kind of want to make about this distancing ourselves from others in our care is a point I've been making for years about charity work, where it used to be when someone in our neighborhood, in our community was in need, the members of the community would help them. The church usually would help them and we would do it out of a sense of love. Charity literally means love. Then we sort of outsource that to government. And so now we say, if you are unemployed or you're in need or your family's hungry, go to the government and they'll give you money. But it outsources it for us. We don't have to do it. What's the word? We're exonerated from it. That's another word. It's not occurring to me. But that's an interesting point is when we begin to outsource this care, the difficult work of care, we are outsourcing the love, or we're draining this activity of love. God said, visit the sick and in prison, clothe the naked, all these things, not just because there's functions that need to be done, but because by doing them, we become like God and we engage in love. And automating these things is draining them of the love that comes from doing it hands-on with people. So that's something I wanted to mention there. There's another aspect of this AI question. It's a little different, but there's this article from First Things called Algorithm Religion. It's not necessarily a new thought. This has been going around, but John Waters writes about this problem of AI and morality. The more we give artificial intelligence to do in our lives, the more it's going to butt up against the necessity to make moral decisions. And the famous one is when we've got self-driving cars and it encounters a situation where it's got to either turn left and hit this person or turn right and hit that person, has no other option. On what basis does the algorithm, does the AI make the decision on who's the one to get hit? And that's the problem. How do we make that decision? So what do you think? I mean, this is the AI trolley problem, essentially, right. The 21st century. What are you guys thinking of this problem that we encounter? How are we going to deal with what he calls artificial moral agents?
I think that, at least from the reading of the article, it seems like he doesn't really understand how AI works, and it really seems like he has the kind of AI is, one, scary, and two, is not going to work very well. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think that self-driving cars, I'm a big fan of the idea because I think it's going to save a lot of people. Because in those situations, there's more factors than just person A is standing here, person B is standing here, and the car is moving. It can take into account how fast is that person moving away from the car. And I read a lot of stuff about it where basically it's going to focus on protecting the person in the car, which legally I think is what you're supposed to do when you're driving. If there's an option to swerve into this way or this way, you're supposed to go straight and try to slow the car down.
Right.
I do think that based on the systems they have, the reaction times from the car itself is going to be quicker than what we can react.
Yeah. Right. That's true.
Well, and I think before we get to that point, because we are still quite a number of years from that point, no matter what people are telling you, that right now, self-driving cars are still a good 10, 15 years off at the best. In real senses, long distance driving, we're fine. That we could probably get to that point in the next 5 to 10 years, but we've still got a long way to go for inner city driving and things like that. The problem is this: we've got some bigger issues to solve with machine learning itself. So this is a similar situation to another one that we could talk about, where if we have machine learning algorithms that are handling HR documents, and they have been trained on sets of data, they have a lot of implicit bias that's already built into them based on the statistics. Mm-hmm. So most doctors are male. When it goes to review the history of statistics of doctors that are awarded and that are the better doctors, quote unquote, it's going to look and see that they're mostly male. We have to get that bias out of the machine when it's going to look at these documents, because it's going to look at all of the female candidates and automatically rank them lower than all of the male candidates. Mm-hmm. And it has no bearing on their ability to be a doctor. That's just the statistics that we've already given it. And so you run into the same problem with the self-driving car. Is the only information it has is the information that it's seen before. And so if it's never had to make this decision, it makes the decision based on any information that it's seen before. It can't project into the future. And that kind of brings us back to our first point, where we were talking about using AI to predict future behavior. And you just can't do that. That's not what AI does.
That's one of the big problems, is the bias built into the machine learning data sets. And when we say bias, it's not necessarily like the bias like racism or sexism, that sort of thing. Bias as in it's built in because the data taken in abstract looks a certain way just because of factors that don't really have anything to do with the real reason it's in there.
Right.
I'm trying to think, like, if a data set of all the photos in my photo library would tend to say that most people have dark hair, therefore people should have dark hair. Like, no, that's just my family. That's just because the data set you have is the data set of my family. You know, it's the trickiness, or there are statistics that are correlation, just like most doctors are male, and so you're going to have a correlation of a lot of the best doctors are going to be male. That doesn't necessarily mean they're all going to be that only male doctors are the best doctors.
Yeah, you just have more data to draw from.
Right.
And also,
I'll give you a great example from my life. We are coming up on having the 8th Sanrio in our house.
Yeah, excellent.
And,
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And but we have a problem, because after 7, the state of Florida does not allow us to have babies in the birthing center anymore. We have to do a home birth.
Really?
Because statistically, apparently, it's more dangerous to have your 8th baby in a birthing center. So my only conclusion here is that somebody looked at the statistics wrong, and one woman, because how many women have 8 babies?
Right.
If one has a problem in a birthing center, suddenly it throws the statistics for the whole group in a very big way. And so it's a ridiculous thing. It's
bizarre.
Completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that's the law in the state that we live in. And
wow.
Yeah, there's a whole other set of issues there too. But that's, it's an interesting thing to have happen, where you've got this set of statistics that doesn't actually mean what is being said, but because that's the only item being used to make a decision, that's how it came down.
Right. That's the danger of using algorithms to make important life-changing decisions, whether it's a self-driving car or what insurance will allow you to do and that sort of thing. So interesting.
And an AI is not really making a decision. It's just operating off a set of it's just a bunch of logic sets that it goes through. So it's not really choosing anything. It's just this is what's going to come out on top if you put this data into it.
And that's an important point, and we should probably come back to this at some point, which is no computer thinks like a human brain. We don't even actually know, technically, how the human consciousness makes decisions and works. We only observe how electricity flows through it, and we know that certain areas of the brain tend to do certain things, although when there's brain damage, sometimes that shifts to other parts of the brain. I mean, it's just a computer is not a human brain is not a flesh computer, and a computer is not just an electronic version of a human brain. And we've got ourselves into a lot of trouble by using computerish language when talking about how our brains work, such that we think that that AI, computers, and those sorts of things can do things that they can't do. and will never be able to
Right.
do because they're not people. And that's a good point you make.
To quote Spock, brain, what is brain?
Excellent. All right. On that note, we're going to move on to our next segment tonight, and we're going to talk just a few headlines. We've talked several times, and early on actually in this podcast series, we talked about the scourge of robocalls, and the president signed a new bill recently that was passed by Congress called the Traced Act, which is supposed to help get rid of robocalls, help slow them down a little bit. What do you guys think of this new law that we have in is it going to help? Is it going to be, or is it just another?
It'll help for 2 weeks until they find a way around it.
Right.
Pretty much. That's my stance too.
So it's supposed to be part of this whole, we've talked about before, like I said, this verification process known as stir shaken. It's a James Bond reference, but the idea is it's supposed to be this, to boil it down, a way to verify that a phone call is being made by the number that it says it is.
Mm-hmm.
When you kind of boil it down, because most of these robocalls are being spoofed. They're coming from not the actual number, because if you have the actual number, then you can trace them and they can prosecute them. Of course, most of these calls are coming in being made by voice over IP, over the internet, a million at a time, and probably originating overseas. Probably, right? Just like
theoretically, yeah.
Just like spam. Yeah. So yeah, I applaud them for taking action as best they can. I don't know if this is bailing out the boat in a hurricane, frankly.
Yeah,
pretty much.
I think technology is probably more likely to help, just like it has with spam, right? I mean, most of my spam ends up in a spam box that I never see it. Of course, so does some of my good mail, and sometimes some of the spam gets through. So it's not perfect, but
I got an email from Warren Buffett the other day, so you know.
Was he offering to send you a bunch of his fortune? Because
yeah,
I got that one too. Awesome, we're set.
See, I don't know. It's an interesting problem though, because you don't have the same kind of protocols over the phone calling as you do over the email, because a lot of what a spam filter does is it just looks at the email address and goes, yeah, that's obviously junk, and tosses it out. Whereas with voice over IP, there are ways to bounce it through a different spot so that you end up with an actual number.
Right.
And then it's an actual number. So, you know, my phone on the end can't evaluate it. My phone company can't evaluate it. So I don't know. I'm not really sure. I know that there's a proposal here, but I'm not really sure what the actual solution to the problem is. It's like, we need to fix this. Yeah, I think we all agree we need to fix it.
I think the problem is also when you get a spam email, all the data is already there and you can look at it. With a call, it's something that's coming in real time, so you cannot analyze the call before it's already come in.
Right. It can't tell me that it's a recording in Chinese, telling me to go to the Chinese consulate.
But if we use the social credit score.
Yeah.
See,
there you go. Back to that. My guess is the Traced Act will take a certain small percentage of all the robocalls off the board, but it's not gonna do much about the vast majority of them. So I think it's gonna be a combination of technology in the phones, technology at the carriers, and legal steps, a combination of all these things that will help us. So I want to get to one more story before we get to our picks of the week, and this one is actually, I want to talk about this one because I have some knowledge about this. A Twitter user was complaining last week that he had a Hewlett-Packard printer, an HP inkjet printer, and he got a warning saying his ink cartridges would be disabled. He would be unable to print until he subscribed to the HP Instant Ink monthly subscription service, which is $5 a month. So what happened was he bought this printer, and he says, and we can only go on what he says, that he discovered the warning after canceling his random $5 a month bill that he kept getting from Hewlett-Packard. after over a year of this $5 showing up on his bill every month. And that's when he got this message. Cartridge cannot be used until printer is enrolled in HP Instant Ink. And outrage ensued. Oh, this is blackmail. This is extortion, blah, 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 blah. So from my point of view, I have one of these printers. What it is instead of having to buy the world's most expensive substance, ink for inkjet printer, it literally is by the ounce. It's the most expensive substance in the world. You subscribe, and so it keeps track of how much you print and sends you more ink as you need it. Now, you could do this on a monthly basis if you print a lot. I wouldn't recommend it. Or you could do it as a charge me as you send it to me, which is what I do because I don't waste that much paper by printing it. So this guy, to my point of view, either this guy was irresponsible when he bought it and didn't know what he was buying, or he bought this and has some sort of buyer's remorse. But you get the printer at a reduced price because the deal is you're going to make it up in the ink that you buy in the subscription. So, I don't know. What do you think of this?
I think he just didn't know what he was doing because they have the specific cartridges that'll have little chips in them and it checks before you print. So he canceled it and he kept using the same cartridges. It's as simple as he just needs to go buy a different ink cartridge.
Right. Or buy a different kind of printer that doesn't.
Right.
Because it won't print using third-party cartridges. You have to print using the cartridges from the Instant Ink service. That's the deal. You can't use any other kind of cartridge, which is it's something you've given up because in the past you could buy third-party ink cartridges and use those and they were cheaper. So it's a balancing act. What do you think, Thomas?
This is like DRM for your ink for your printer.
Pretty much.
It's just obnoxious. And like I would like to know, where are the printers? Where can I pay a little bit of extra money to get a printer that I can just refill the ink cartridge from whatever I want to? Like I can just stick a needle in it, inject it, refill it.
They make those.
Go.
The EcoTank from Epson can do that. I used to have one of those, and I got this one as a review unit for free. So that's I should be clear about this HP one. I'm not defending HP, but I did get this one for free. But the EcoTank, it was just to open the lid and pour ink in. So wherever you get that ink from, that's to me, that's a better deal. If you really want to be free from the tyranny of platinum ink, platinum priced ink, that would be the way to do it.
Yeah.
The one that seemed a lot worse to me is, and I had this at work where we have these cartridges. We have a big, huge Kanoka printer, and it I can't remember what kind it is. It's not a LaserJet. But if you take the cartridge out and put it back in, it will read the cartridge as empty, even though it's still full. So you cannot take the cartridges out like to clean them or whatever.
Yes.
So that's the one that really bothers me because it's fully functional. The HP story sounds bad on its face, but it's really a case of the guy not understanding what he was buying. Like, I don't want to defend HP, but this is
right.
He didn't know what he was buying.
If you buy an Apple product, there is planned obsolescence.
Exactly.
I mean, it's there. It's built in. My wife is struggling with that with her phone right now because she's like, I can't even get the update because there's no space on this phone for it. And I'm like, you have an older model of an Apple phone. That's kind of the deal you make with Apple for it.
It's the deal you make with any phone service or anything like that. I mean, it's nothing lasts forever, but
right.
they all don't make money if you hold on to your equipment forever and ever. They go out of business. Well, and Jack, what you were saying, having myself dealt with printer leasing companies for offices and organizations. And I mean, this is small potatoes compared to the shenanigans that go on with these companies. Like, where you find out that the toner is telling you it's empty and you need to buy a new one. And then, someone comes along and goes, oh, you know what? If you shake that and put it back in, it will read as 3/4 full. It's designed to say empty when it's still mostly full and things like that. It's really the whole toner cartridge ink thing has been a shady business for about 35 years. So we just
well, like at my home, my Epson printer is out of yellow ink currently, so it will not print black and white prints.
Right. Exactly. because it needs that expensive
It's
yellow
got to have
cartridge.
that yellow ink to print these strictly grayscale prints. Yeah.
That's right. Yes, the printers, the whole printer thing is just a mess. But in this case, I think this guy just kind of it didn't pay attention to what he was buying. I think that's
Absolutely
the case.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our picks of the week, and this is where we choose one thing we want to highlight that we've been using, or maybe a tip we want to give to people. But Thomas, I'll let you go first. What's your pick of the week?
All right, my pick of the week is an app that I found this week. I've been looking for a good reader app on my phone. I have very few requirements, but they're very specific because I get documents in from all sorts of file types. So I have PDFs, I have Mobis, I have EPUBs, I have everything. And I am lazy and I do not want to spend the time to convert them all in Calibre. I just want them to work. So I finally found an app that does it. I also need the dark screen reader so that it's the white letters on the black background. That's really, I like that. I think that's really important. And so I found this one. It's called Moon Plus Reader, and it's pretty cheap. And they have a free version, but there's also a cheap to buy version for it. It's a one-time purchase. It does all of the different file types that I want. It has a nice organization and tagging pattern to it. So I can tag any of the books that I want to with a particular topic type. I can put them into their own collections so that I can pull up a bookshelf that's just those collections. It's really great. And once I fiddled with my Android phone a little bit and then managed to find the folder that I needed to put everything in, which didn't actually take as much effort as I was worried it was going to, I now have all of my books in one spot, and it goes straight to that folder, reads them all, pulls them all in, and we're good to go.
Yeah, it'll read pretty much anything. EPUB, PDF, Mobi, AZW3, those are all ebook formats. Word docs, yeah, even web Markdown even. Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's a really great program. I've been really, really happy with it.
Excellent. That's good. And then the Pro version, which removes ads and gives you a few other features, is about $5. So that's a pretty good deal. That's a good deal. Excellent. Jack, what's your pick of the week?
My pick of the week is a sketchbook from Autodesk. It's an illustration program. I like to use it with a Wacom tablet, like not the kind you have the screen with, but you look at the screen and draw. You can use it on there. You can use it on iOS, or they have an Android available also. It used to be $99 a year, like a subscription, but they recently made it free, which is really nice because it includes all the features. It's really good for illustration if you're doing like comic books or digital painting. I use it for that. You can do like different layers, and it comes with like if you subscribe to it, it would give you a bunch of different brushes, and now they have those all free too. So you can go and just download loads of different brushes. So it's a fun program, and it's free now, so there's no reason not to try it out.
That's awesome. This is the times when I wish I was an artist. I don't have an artistic bone in my body, but man, I would love to. As I see these great tools, I'm like, maybe I could be an artist. Then I like draw a stick figure. Nope.
Then you try, yeah.
Still
I feel
not
that
an
way too. Where
artist.
it's like, nope, still not going that way.
Well, at least my wife's an artist, and my daughter is getting there too. So maybe I'll give it to them and let them go to town on it. That's awesome. All right, those are good ones. My pick is something new I got. I am in the Amazon Echo ecosystem. I've had a few of those for several years. So Amazon knows everything that goes on in my house. I'm just okay with that, I suppose. And so I said, well, why don't I go with the Amazon Echo Show? It's an Echo that has a screen on it. And the reason I went with this, I wasn't going to do this for ages because why do I need a screen? I talk to it. It gives me the information audibly. It's always been that way. But the reason I went with it is when Amazon bought the Ring video company, the Ring doorbell, they connected the show with the Ring. So now if someone's at my door and they ring the doorbell, all I have to do is say Echo, or the wake word, show me the front door, and the video from that pops up on the screen there. I don't have to take my phone out of my pocket, unlock it, open it up, try to get to the app real quick before they walk away, or the whole shebang. I've got it right there. It's a much faster, and that was the big thing for me. But it also does things like it shows me the time, the temperature, the forecast. It could show me like headlines and stuff. When you take it out of the box and set it up, it's like showing you everything. It's like a distraction magnet. I had to turn a whole bunch of that stuff off, but you can have it play videos, like show me a recipe for such and such. Show me play music for me. You can have it play even like TV shows on it if you want. I got the Echo Show 5, which is a 5-inch screen, so it's a pretty small. It would be a small TV show, but it's pretty nice. And the best part, one of the best parts, is it has a camera, so you could do video calling, but there's a physical shutter that you can slide shut.
Oh, nice.
To cover the camera.
That's good.
Yeah. So you can do that. I haven't done is thought about where the mute button is, because sometimes I like to mute the if I remember to, I mute it while I'm doing shows so that it doesn't think I'm saying its name, even when I'm talking about, Alec Baldwin. I had to stop and wait, make sure it didn't wake up, or something like that. So I sometimes mute it so it doesn't hear me, but I don't know where the button is. I'm sure there's a button on it for that too. But anyway, Amazon Echo Show, and it was on sale recently for $69, and I had a gift certificate, so that was a good deal. So that's my pick. All right.
I have to brag on one of my previous picks too.
Oh, yeah?
So this week I lost a tire cap to one of my tire valves, and I don't want to drive around like that.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna 3D print one. So
Nice.
I'm now the proud owner of 8 tire caps, 4 for my car and 4 for my wife's car, that are all TARDISes. And you just print them up and then screw them on, and it threads right onto the thing. You just tighten it down and it threads right in there. But they all little TARDISes all on the car.
You're convincing me
That's
more
crazy.
and more every day that I want a 3D printer.
You, man.
Oh man,
It's good stuff.
oh man, that's so awesome. I love this idea. I was telling my kids about this the other day. This idea that if you have a 3D printer, theoretically, you could print the replacement parts for any kind of thing. I've got stuff that I've broken, like camping equipment with a piece of broken plastic. You could 3D print a replacement for it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Lego minifigs.
It's the truth. See, I've done it. There it is.
I joke that being a dad means becoming an expert at using superglue to superglue all the broken toys, but you could also 3D print replacement parts.
There you go.
Okay. So excellent. That's good. All right. So, folks, if you want to find out anything about any of our picks of the week, they're on our website. If you go to sqpn.com/technology, scroll down, you'll see a database there that lists all of the different picks of the week, and you can reorder it by show or by guest and panelist or host, and you can see all of my picks or all of Thomas's picks, that sort of thing, all together. You can be able to find his 3D printer pick right there. All right. I think that does it for tonight. So first, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Secrets of Technology, including Mike M., Ben and Susie S., Brian T., Jacob W., and Tim H. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Technology and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And I also want to thank James Hamill, who sends us many links to different articles, stories that we can possibly use. We will gladly take any links and suggestions of stories that we should cover, any topics we should cover. You can send those to technology@sqpn.com. And if you want to send us any comments on anything we've discussed, you can go to sqpn.com/technology. We have a Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or that email address at technology@sqpn.com. And as I said before, we'll put all the links from our discussion and the picks of the week in our show notes on our website. If you have not yet done so, please subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, your favorite podcast app, or at the SQPN YouTube channel. You should also hit the bell to get notifications. Until next time, Jack Barazzini, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Technology.
Thanks, Tom.
And Thomas Sanderho, thank you as well.
It was a pleasure.
And once again, I am Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.